the French Laundry. They have never worn masks. They've been throwing their own parties with no masks. They're a bunch of hypocrites. The whole lot of them. All right. In other news, Xi Jinping and Putin got together and they're apparently besties. Here's the quote: "Some actors representing, but the minority on the international scale," I think that's us, "continue to advocate unilateral approaches to addressing international issues and resort to force. They interfere in the internal affairs of other states, infringing their legitimate rights and interest, and incite contradictions, differences, and confrontation." The statement said, "I am willing to work with President Vladimir Putin to plan a blueprint and guide the direction of Sino-Russian relations under new historical conditions." Mr. Xi said. He added that China and Russia should act like big countries as they intensify coordination on fighting the coronavirus pandemic, yada, yada. Any feedback from our squad?
I mean, you could have rewritten that press release as, we want to try to destroy U.S. hegemony and replace it with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. This is the beginning of the end of U.S. cultural and economic influence globally, or dominance, rather, influence globally. And I think that it's something that we've talked about quite a lot. I mentioned in the prediction episode that I thought that Putin was going to play a major role this year, and he's clearly not just out for his own interests, but he's going to play a really important role in China's rise to economic and cultural dominance.
You agree, Chamath? Is this the sign that they're going to be running the show? Or does this look like something else to you?
No. I don't think that there's a show to run. I think the point is that there was a first among equals for the last many decades in the world order where, America was that first among equals. And I think what they're saying is that it's time for that to change. And they're going to tie that to their ability to influence foreign policy in countries the way that we have historically. So, this is sort of basically putting a marker on the table that says this is going to be about, a different cohort of people that are also going to have an equal say. And if you think about where this all plays out, it's always in economics, right? And this is where, again, you have to think about what China has done, which is they have, while we were fighting wars, putting trillions of dollars into the Middle East, they took their $1 trillion and bought resources all through Africa.
Yep.
Right?
They built infrastructure.
They bought infrastructure all through South America. They put infrastructure all through Southeast Asia. Call it $15 trillion that we spent in one direction, they spent another. That's a $30 trillion gap that's going to create a resource imbalance that they will use to create even more influence in the future. And we have to figure out a way to counteract that.
Sacks, what do you think? Is this a changing moment in the world order? Should we be worried that these two dictators are going to act in unison and then maybe one gets the Ukraine, one gets Taiwan? Is this like really earth-shattering news, or do you think it's saber-rattling and not that big of a deal?
Well, I think it's a dramatic statement and photo that was put out. It was a continuation of what we've seen where they have, Xi and Putin have been getting, and Russia and China, they've been getting friendlier and friendlier. What saddens me and sort of sickens me as really an American patriot who would like to see the American world order continue is the way that we have blundered and created this type of situation. So to Chamath's point, first of all, we wasted 20 years trying to do nation building in the Middle East. Wasted $6 trillion on that. How did China, lose by not being part of that? They benefited. They were building Belt and Road while we were, engaged in this foolish interventions in the Middle East. And now more recently with Putin, we've really driven Putin into Xi's arms because we keep threatening to add Ukraine to NATO, which is not something that's in America's interest. If we would just give up on that position or just reaffirm that Ukraine should not be admitted to NATO, it would enormously help diffuse tensions with Russia. And by the way, your point that these are dictators, they're natural allies, that's not historically been true. So during the days of the Soviet Union, you had Nixon and Kissinger make the great opening to Mao in China, and we were able to cultivate a relationship there because China and Russia were natural antagonists. And it was a major move in the Cold War that we were able to cultivate Mao. And we did so, even though he was a dictator with blood on his hands. So Russia and China are not natural allies. We should be doing a better job of not so thoroughly alienating Putin that he is rushing into Xi's arms. That's the blunder I see here.
By the way, after this summit, they're going to meet with Iran. There's a tripartite thing.
Access of dictators. This is like the Legion of Doom.
We need to be playing our cards in a much smarter way.
Yeah, we need to play our cards.
Look,
what is the strategy? I mean,
the strategy is, look, we want the American-led world order to continue, but we got to be much more selective about picking and choosing our battles.
Yeah.
Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, they were huge mistakes. And now on top of it,
what about
we're
looking
talking
forward,
about
Sacks?
Ukraine. What's that?
Yeah. Looking forward, like you keep bringing up the past. What's the look forward strategy in your mind?
The look forward strategy, I think, is to diffuse and de-escalate the situation in Ukraine exactly the way Obama did it, which is to recognize that America does not have a vital national interest the way that Russia does.
Then how do you handle Taiwan?
Reaffirm that the nations of the Caucasus that have border disputes with Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, they are not eligible candidates for NATO at the present time. Kick that can down the road by 10 years. Okay.
We talked about that last episode.
Taiwan is a much more complicated situation. I do think we have a vital national interest there.
Got it. Okay. So two very different situations. I actually agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. I think Taiwan, we have to hold the line. Yeah.
We have a responsibility in the United States, and I think we're starting to do it. So I think there is good news where, part of the strategic vital interest for Taiwan is because they have critical resources that we need and we depend on. And specifically, those are semiconductors. We have now, I think, allocated, $50, $100 billion of capital, of CapEx across a bunch of companies that have committed to building domestic capability. And so we have to make sure we follow through on that and that's successful. And the reason is that it gives us optionality. It allows us to breathe. It allows us to actually make rational decisions and be patient in our decision making. And I think that's going to be really important over the next 10 or 20 years. And so we have to invest in the United States. So the solution to all of these things is we cannot be overly dependent on any one country, any one shipping lane, any one product, any one natural resource. You just can't do that anymore.
We have to be strong at home and we have to build strong relationships with other countries. And yeah, I think we've got an operating philosophy here. All right, listen, let's wrap there. We'll see everybody on the next episode for the dictator, Chamath Palihapitiya, the Sultan of Science, David Friedberg, and the Rain Man himself, triumphant versus Peter Thiel in that PayPal match. Great moment. David Sacks.
Love you, boys.
Love you, besties. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
We'll let your winners ride.
Rain Man David Sacks.
And instead, we open source it to the fans, and they've just gone crazy with it.
Love you, besties.